Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany with Creation, and welcome to our virtual experiences. We're so glad you've joined us today. Just a reminder that the top tipper will get a 5-minute one-on-one video with Julian right after this Q&A, so make sure your Stageit profile is updated with your current email address and phone number. Appearing in over 50 films like Percy Jackson and Man of Steel, as well as 20 TV shows including Orphan Black and Supernatural, please welcome Julian Richings.
Thanks, Brittany. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Death's Kitchen Live, or Live in Death's Kitchen. It's strange to be talking to everybody from my own place, but kind of a great solution to a problem that we've suddenly encountered. I was one of the fortunate last members of a live con with Creation when we did Vegas back in March. And at that point, the world was beginning to shift, and Creation was actually ahead of the curve and made it a non-touch con. And we observed all the correct protocols and stuff. But who would have thought 3 months later, here we are, live in the kitchen. And this is kind of the way that we're going. But it seems to be a good solution. And bravo to everybody. Thanks, Brittany, and thanks, Warner, for your technical support and assistance. And we'll see if we can do this as problem-free as possible. I'm not the greatest technological guy, but I've got great support. So I'm going to not talk much more. I'm going to go straight into questions because I'm getting a load of them here. All right, here we go. Moose Swoose Art. If you could relive any moment from your life, what would you choose and why? My goodness me. You would think I would be better prepared, and you would think that, you know, by being able to read these questions, they wouldn't take me by surprise, but they do. And so, okay, there's going to be an awkward pause here. One moment from my life, I don't know. I think a really big moment for me was the time that I first came over on tour with the theatre company. I grew up, when I say came over, I mean came over to North America. I grew up in England in a very tight community, tight family. I worked in theatre in England, and the first time that I actually went on a plane ever was to come on tour to Toronto, New York, and Chicago with a theatre show. And I think it just broadened my horizon and exploded my mind. And I was just overwhelmed and just excited by this extraordinary new world and new spatial relationships between everything. So I think I would love to go back and kind of get a sampling of the way that I felt. And I remember specifically, we were on a plane. There was a smoking section at the back. Of course, people used to smoke at that time on planes. And our leg from the UK to Holland, we went to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam to Toronto. And there was a lot of fuss because the rock band Status Quo were in the back seats. And we spent the whole trip, this is my first ever trip, I was terrified. I was looking at the pilot in the front, because everything was open, it was pre-9/11. And I kept looking back, and everybody else was looking back at the members of Status Quo. And that was a big deal to me. All right, I'm gonna carry on. I mustn't waffle too much because I know there's a lot of questions here. All right, where are we? Question for Julian. Josephine Neville. What is Julian's favorite type of pizza? Does he like the same type of pizza Death ate in Supernatural? Well, it's funny you should say that. I like all types of pizza. Here's proof. Look. Let the pizza. Here we are. I got to go on my tiptoes here. Guide you home. All right. There is quite a lot of similarity between the character I play on Supernatural and my own appetites. I love junk food. Well, people call it junk food. I don't. I love food that is comforting and easy to make and full of cheese and spices and is easy to digest, or maybe later on it's harder to digest, I don't know. Anyway, my favorite, I think, is Chicago is one of them. I specifically remember the one that we used in that scene in Supernatural because the props master was really clear about getting a A1 Chicago pizza. Obviously, Supernatural is shot in Vancouver, so he wanted authenticity, and he knew somebody that had a restaurant that did an authentic Chicago pizza, deep dish. And I'd never had one. I live in Toronto, and we don't have access to that particular style. We have the thinner crust pizzas. Anyway, it's the first time that I'd ever experienced something like that. And it was fantastic and very easy to eat. But unfortunately, I liked it so much that I ate way too much of it even on the rehearsal, as we were trying to figure out what we were doing and when we would take bites, so that actually it led to my downfall, because I think take number 3 or 4, when I'm still having to eat and go, would you like some more? It was actually a real issue for me to try and swallow it down. But I survived, and I still like pizza and all varieties. So, all right, on to the next one. I also noticed that pizza has been the dish of choice during this pandemic, and it's kind of weird. I've watched very little, well, some delivery people coming around, but mainly people with big boxes of pizza walking around. So I've missed out on that recently, and I'm looking forward to ordering some. I'm hungry now. Okay, Amanda Jane. Hey, how did you feel when you found out you were playing Death in Supernatural? Well, what was weird about that was that, I mean, I was delighted. I'm an actor. I like getting jobs, and I audition for a lot of things, and I'm a character actor. I've been working for over 40 years as an actor. So I tend to do a lot of auditions. I tend to get a lot of rejection, but that's okay. That's part of the whole way of doing your business. So I remember that I auditioned for this show called Supernatural, which I'd never heard of at the time. Don't tell anyone. And I did this audition on tape, put myself on tape, and it was a well-written scene, but it was for a character named Pestilence. And I had no idea what that was, but I thought it was really cool the way that it was written. So I put myself on tape, submitted the tape, and didn't hear anything. So you don't think anything of that. You just carry on with your life. And then almost a year later, my agent called and said, "You've got that job on Supernatural." And I went, "Oh, great. Oh, good. Okay, that scene, Pestilence, right?" And she said, "No, Death." So it was a strange moment where I actually didn't get the part that I thought I'd read for, but I was even more pleased because I thought, wow, Death, that's great, to play the Grim Reaper. So I guess what had happened in the audition process was the writers had one specific script that they wanted to put out there, and they wanted a bunch of different people that they were interested in as the 4 horsemen to read that one script, and then they would make their choice from the pool of entries that they had. So that's the story of when I first got it, and needless to say, I was delighted. And the weird, it's very funny, I go like this, I move this way, and I go that way on the screen. Oh, technology, it's so interesting. Okay, normally what happens is that I'm on stage for a Q&A, and I can burn off energy by walking around and looking at people and waving to them and that, but I'm stuck here. And now I realize that my only parameters are within this screen. Anyway, that's a digression. I apologize. So yeah, so I was delighted to get the role, and funnily enough, my agent rang and told me that I had the role when I was on location doing another shoot. So it was sort of a second thought. Like I was so focused on doing this feature movie that, and it was a big job, and a big role that required a lot of investment of time and energy. So the supernatural offer sort of came as a surprise and came as an afterthought. Little did I know how important that was and how it would go on to become a major part of my life. Okay, Shannon asks, besides Supernatural, what is your favorite role you've played so far? Well, okay, as I've said before, I'm a character actor mainly, and I played an awful lot of different characters over the years. And I tend to get kind of in a, I won't say typecast, but I tend to convey a particular type of character, let's say, with certain attributes. Look at my face, listen to my voice. I mean, clearly, you know, it's going to be on the darker, the severe side of things. I'll play a lot of priests or doctors or grim reapers. But there's another sort of type of person that I play, or I've had the fortune to play, and that is musicians. And one of the favorite roles I've ever done is a Canadian movie, an independent movie. It hasn't had widespread release, but it's a cult film in Canada, and I'm very proud of that. It's called Hardcore Logo. And that's the name of the band. It's a punk band that reunites in the 1990s and goes on what turns out to be a disastrous tour. Now, my role in that is not one of the band members. It's actually their mentor and inspiration, who they drive out to see on a remote farm in the prairies. And he's kind of an Iggy Pop kind of figure that's a reclusive musical inspiration. And it was just a fantastic experience for me. The director, I had a really good common vocabulary with, and I've done a lot of work with him since. And it, for me, represents a very important part of me, which is music. I grew up in England, and the biggest influence on my life was probably rock and roll. And for me, growing up in the UK in the 70s, punk was a huge factor in expression, in energy, in just a whole social movement. So I was thrilled to be able to kind of pool all my heroes, like Shane MacGowan, Joe Strummer, Joey Ramone, Iggy Pop, those kind of people, and kind of borrow from them and create this character called Bucky Haight. So, so hopefully that's a useful plug for the movie, because it's a really good movie, and it stood up to the test of time. Even though it's 20 some years old, it's still considered to be a great music film. It was shot as a documentary, actually, or at least with a documentary style, and this was before The Office, before mockumentaries became popular. And so it was really a trailblazer. We'd had Spinal Tap, but the director, Bruce McDonald, said that he wanted to do a film that was like Spinal Tap's nasty little brother. In other words, something that was kind of fun and had a great energy, but was also took itself more seriously and was angrier than Spinal Tap. And I think he succeeded very well. And he decided to give it a documentary feel, so that the cameraman and the sound guy and the actual director would be just off stage. So you would see the boom come into shot, you would see stuff, and he would interview people, and then all the fragments would be cut together as if it was a documentary. In fact, it was a very carefully written and choreographed film. And it was so groundbreaking that it was entered into the Berlin Film Festival that year. I can't remember which exact year it was. And it was entered in as a documentary. And nobody actually realized that it wasn't a documentary, that it was actually completely fabricated. And then since then, obviously, we've had a whole culture of sort of pretend mockumentaries and pseudo reality shows. But so that was a groundbreaking role for me, and it's an area of my life that still continues to inspire me. All right, that was a long answer. Okay, there's still questions coming in. Now, I'm not being able to scroll. Oh, yeah, I can scroll here. The big pause as Julian's fingers somehow managed to get something working here. Okay. Aha. Elizabeth Thomas asks, hi, Elizabeth. Julian, you had so many food-related scenes on Supernatural. Was any of that food actually tasty? And how many takes did you have to keep eating? Well, I've already told you the story of the pizza, how, I thought the Chicago pizza was fantastic and I hadn't had enough of it. It began to be quite the fun game where I was told, my agent would say, you're in another episode of Supernatural. And I would go, great, what am I eating in this one? Because obviously it was a successful formula, like the character of Death, the idea that he likes something that's very human and it's almost like a human vice, the idea of junk food and compulsive eating. And the idea that somebody as all-powerful as Death would really enjoy it, and the idea that it would be a sort of a way to sit down and have a conversation with Dean. So it became a recurring thing. So I began to look forward to what was being written into the scene. So I remember we had hot dogs, which I enjoyed, hot dogs and fries. That's a favorite of mine. But they don't kind of retain their, like once you've got onto number 2 and you're on to take 33, they lose their allure. But the one that stands out is pickle chips. I've never heard of them before. I've had some pretty weird things because I grew up in England, and in English pubs you have like pickled eggs, you had pickled onions, you had porky scratchings, which was sort of like pork fat that was like, I don't know how it was treated, but it was very salty and very hard. Probably the reason why I don't have many teeth left now. So I'm used to some pretty unusual side dishes, but fried pickle chips was a first. And they were great, and they were actually kind of strange enough and light enough that I could keep eating them. So they were the ones that I actually took home that night and said, "Can I take some to my hotel, and I'll have some with my supper." So they were a big hit, and I think of all of my food types, they're the ones that Supernatural fans ask me most about, and also continue to be a source of mystery to a lot of people. All right, carrying on here. Okay, Tina L. Hi, Tina. If you could time travel, which year or century would you prefer, and why? Okay, well, so here we are in the 21st century, and I think I like my creature comforts, so I certainly wouldn't want to go too far back in time. I like the idea of plumbing, and I like the idea of being able to wash my hands. So I don't think I'll go right back to pioneering times, which even, in the evolution of history is still not very long ago. So why don't I go for Victorian London? One of the reasons for that is simply because I play a lot of Victorian Englishmen, and it's a pretty fascinating time. And I kind of fit in there, I think. I think that's where people see my features, and when you see Dickensian adaptations, a lot of people go, "Why weren't you in that?" Or "Was that you? Were you the guy in the top hat?" And so I feel at home there. I think it was a very brutal time. and a time where Britain was at the height of its empire. So for that very reason, a mixed bag of emotions, good and bad, a lot of exploitation, a lot of things that were clearly creating a system that was innately unjust, as we've seen right the way up to right now, what's going on. But also fascinating, and some great pioneers like Lister, who introduced the whole idea of washing hands as being one of the primary causes of health, primary sources of healthcare, which, you know, has and still has an effect today, as we all too sadly know. So yeah, I find it fascinating. I also did a game. I don't do many games. I did a Ubisoft game, Assassin's Creed, that was set in Victorian England, and I played Charles Darwin, which was a lot of fun. And I'd never sort of performed in that environment before. It's a very different acting style. And what happens is that the graphic designer and the art director really call the shots, because they have to compose your physical body in the light of the picture that they're creating for the game. So it was a really different experience for me. And it was very cool, because I would find myself playing a famous Victorian actor, famous Victorian person, I should say. And then I would go over to the screen and see the rendering of the environment that they'd created around me. And it was just mind-boggling. There were all these Victorian streets and stagecoaches and bars and barrels and things. And that was a truly groundbreaking experience for me. I've since done a few video games, but yeah, so there you go. Victorian England, and a little bit of a digression about one of the roles that I've played in Victorian England. Thanks for the question. All right. Oh, Brittany. So, oh, no, this is from Brittany. This is Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Kelly, it hasn't fallen asleep yet. Well done, Kelly. You're awake because you've asked, what's the Dark Carnival poster on your wall about? Okay. Now, this is weird because of, like, yeah. I get mixed up. Here we go. You ready? I'm going to go in close on it. This is welcome to my kitchen. Can you see it? There we go. The Dark Carnival, the greatest horror show. It was a con that I did in Hamilton, Ontario, a few years ago with, sadly, who's no longer with us, George Romero was there, and Guillermo del Toro, and a bunch of people from horror films. As you might know, I do a lot of work particularly in the horror genre, as well as supernatural, but I've done work in shows, I don't know, Stephen King, Kingdom Hospital, Wrong Turn, Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. I've done a bunch of like kind of macabre, dark stuff. I can't imagine why. And so this was somewhere where I wasn't just death. I was Julian Richings, aka Death, but also known to a very specific and passionate horror community as well. So I do the occasional sort of crossover con as well. So that's what that is. Northwards Bound. Hi, Northwards Bound. I don't know what your other name is or whatever, but so what's the weirdest thing a fan has ever given you or asked you to sign? Well, my autograph, I think, has to be up there. Somebody came along and she said, okay, well, sign your autograph on my hand with this special pen, and it's going to be rendered, and I'm going to turn it into a tattoo. My goodness me. And she already had like several upper arm and on shoulder, on the other shoulder. So I was kind of impressed and surprised, and I went, well, sure, okay. And I was a bit afraid to take up too much space, to be honest. I thought, well, if she gets fed up with either me personally or the show or something. I don't want to take too much space so that she can get rid of it easily or cover it up easily. So that was an extraordinary moment. Oh, hi. Sorry if I say your name wrong. Elena. No, Elena. That's how it is. Elena. Hi, Elena. I love listening to you read. Do you do voice acting or audiobook readings? Well, that's very nice of you. And obviously, you've been listening to me reading Beatrix Potter. I should just say to everybody else that during this pandemic, certainly in the first couple of months, my wife actually came up with the suggestion that it would be nice to do something that's kind of just completely calming and relaxing and takes us a little bit away from the fear and the anxiety that we're all feeling about this pandemic. And this is back in the early days when we really didn't know what was happening or what the course of the pandemic would take. So I didn't quite know what to do. So she suggested Beatrix Potter, which actually I have one somewhere. Where is it? Here. These little book, we've got a whole set of them, and they were the favorites of our kids when they used to go to bed. And I used to love reading them. And for me, coming from Oxford in England, they sort of lend themselves to my accent, and they encapsulate a lot of that kind of rural English thing. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just sit in front of the screen like here, and I'll read a few, and I'll just put them out on Instagram. And if people like them, then that's great. And in fact, I got a huge feedback, and a lot of parents were watching it with their kids. And I thought, well, great. So that was one of my projects during the pandemic, was to actually sort of put that out there and to hope that it would provide a sort of a little island of calm. I mean, they're certainly, I'm sure they are not the most world-changing books, but they're quite beautiful. They're sort of artifacts from a different time. So do I do much voice work? A fair amount. Obviously I have an accent, and so that can be a good thing, and it can be problematic. It means that I'm very specific. So I'll do narration for films, documentaries particularly, and sometimes cartoons, but that's a real art form. And in order to pack the energy into 2 lines of dialogue, and I normally use my body, and I run around and I get rid of that energy physically, and I rely on my body a lot to actually help me communicate. Voice actors are extraordinary. I mean, there is this whole thing where they can, within 2 or 3 words, create an energy that suggests an entire character. So not a lot. It's interesting, a lot of voice acting is happening at the moment because really it's the only thing that people can do from home. A lot of voice actors now have very up-to-date studios, or the technology that allows them to download stuff in an MP3 file and then just send it to producers that can be used. So it's definitely a big thing at the moment for actors because there's not much else on the horizon, and it's worrying. I'm lucky because I'm in film and television mainly. I'm not in live theatre, but a lot of my friends, a lot of my family who were involved in the theatre specifically, this is a difficult time. Now, it's a difficult time for everybody. Don't let's be vague about that. Everybody's suffering, but anybody that who deals with a live audience, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's tourist industry, or whether it's the theater, we don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm in a bit of a better position than a theater actor in that at least film production might start coming back with new protocols within a month or 2, I hope. And I hope that it's safe for that to happen too. I mean, I err on caution, and I I hope that we don't all of us rush back into things too quickly, because obviously we're desperate to get back to a sense of normalcy, but I think we also have to be very careful. Oh, getting very serious here. Okay. If, I should say, Linda. Hi, Linda. This is Linda, click 09. If death had one totally outrageous quality about him, what would you want it to be? Oh, I see. I sort of, if he had an outrageous quality about him, well, I think he does. And I think that's why I like him. And I think that's why he's an enduring character in the supernatural universe. I think he encapsulates so many things, and that he's not just some spooky old guy that is coming to wreak havoc and to reap you. He actually is quite complicated. He clearly likes people. He really likes particularly Dean and Sam, but particularly Dean. He has a close connection with them. And he's also, he also kind of has a friendly uncle's view of them. They amuse him, and they clearly, they annoy him, but he takes great delight in their failures. And he takes great delight in telling them or showing them how they're going wrong. So I think that's really cool. And I really like the whole idea of his appetite, his very human appetite, and his amazement at the stupidity of people. But also he's a bit vain, and he's a bit mannered, and he's rather full of himself. So he's got like a whole spectrum of different qualities. If he was to, where are we? To have a totally outrageous quality, well, I think we would just take it a bit further and say that he would love to perform. I think that it would be fun to see Death recite poetry, or to get up and sing a beautiful song, because he felt that he was a very cultured person, and that and also he would instill a lot of emotion and passion into it. And I think that would be a kind of a cool juxtaposition with somebody that's so powerful and so non-human in many ways. So I would just, it would be fun to take it a little further, but I don't think it goes against what's already there in the writing, which is so good, which should always be remembered. You know, when people say, "Oh, you were amazing, you were great as Death." Well, thank you. I enjoyed playing him, but that writing of that character gives me enough complicated things, complicated moments and attributes to play, and that always makes a character much more interesting. Okay. What is the other poster? Sam's girl, hi. I don't know what your name is, but hi. What is the other poster behind you mean? This one. Ah, so this goes back. Sorry about I'm not very good at operating this. Where are we? Oh, it's this side. Aha. Let me go closer. No. I need a camera operator. Yeah, I really do. Okay, there we go. Can you see it? World Cup football, 1966. Now, I have a feeling most of you won't even have been born in 1966. Well, I was well alive. I was a pretty young fella. And the World Cup of football was held in England, which was a big deal. And actually, England went on to win that World Cup competition. I say football, it's soccer to anybody in North America. I was a big football fan. I still am. And what's interesting about that is that, well, of course, I went to London for the day. I grew up in Oxford, and that's about an hour away from London. And I somehow had a ticket for one of the games. It was France versus Mexico, which was one of the smaller games in terms of, you know, the grandeur of the fixture. At the time, those teams weren't so important as they are now. Anyway, I had a ticket. I went up. I was taken with a couple of friends and relatives, And it was a big deal. I got to London to see the World Cup. I'll come back to it. Hello, it's me again. So I bought a tea towel for my mum, because there was all souvenirs and scarves and hats and stuff, you know, World Cup. The beginning of merchandising, it was a lot subtler then. There wasn't so much, but there were tea towels. That was the thing. And I got a tea towel for my mum, and I proudly bought it, and I took it home, and I said, went to the World Cup, and here's a tea towel, Mum. Now, Mum, being Mum, of course, didn't use it, would never touch it, because it was special, because I bought it for her. And when she moved and she gave me a bunch of stuff from her old apartment, there it was, all folded up, all neat. And I thought, wow, it's beautiful. And it reminds me so much of back then. And it's such an iconic image. And it's kind of interesting too, because there are countries on here like, it's Yugoslavia, for instance, no longer exists. Like a lot of football, the actual football grounds that the matches were played at, I think there might be one remaining, Villa Park and Goodison Park in Birmingham and in Liverpool. I think they're the two remaining grounds. So, you know, it's also a testament to time passing and to the evolution of politics and world history. So that's my other contribution. And it's a kitchen, it's Death's Kitchen. So it feels like an appropriate thing here. Okay. Okay. Ebba. Hi, Ebba. What's been the best reaction when people have seen you? Any good stories? Well, yeah, I do get high death a lot, which is, it's always kind of funny. It always gets me laughing. And I always reply, you know, and I'm always quite happy with that one. It does shock some people because, you know, a lot of people that in my neighborhood, for instance, have no idea about supernatural. They just know me as this guy, this actor guy that lives down the road. And then when, you know, when somebody will yell out, "Death, got any pizza?" You know, stuff like that. They kind of do a double take. But the single most extraordinary reaction is one that I've told people about a lot, but I loved it. So I did a convention with Creation at Dallas, and it was in a hotel, and it was a very high-rise hotel. And for some reason, I think I was staying in a high floor, and I was coming down on the elevator, and there was a Creation person assisting me right there. And we were going down, and we were going down like 30 floors down to a convention level. Well, like the first floor past my floor, somebody got on, very, very straight looking business guy that was obviously going to a meeting of some kind, very done up, tie and briefcase and stuff. And there's me, and, you know, nodded. And then we go down about 10 more floors, and the doors open, ping, and there's a whole bunch of people moving around and running around. And obviously this is the floor that there's a lot of supernatural fans on. And they're all running around, getting together and seeing which elevator they can all come on to get down to the Q&As on time. So it goes ping, and it starts to close, and then somebody obviously sees that it's closing, runs up, presses the button again, and it pings open. And so a whole kind of gaggle of people come up, like that 7 or 8 people, all laughing and go, "Oh, good, we got the elevator." And they come into the elevator, and they took one look at me and go, "Ah!" And then they all turn and they run away. And then the elevator door goes closed. And so there I am in the elevator with this other guy in the briefcase. And the best thing ever was his reaction for the rest of the journey down. He's just standing there looking at me, wondering what I've done or who I am or what's going on. And that I would take that memory to the end of my life. I think it was fantastic. And it kind of puts everything in perspective too, about the joy of conventions and kind of how what a fun community we're a part of, and what a great excuse it is to get together and party. And I think that's the thing that, you know, for all of us is such a challenge right now, is that sense of community and being tactile. And what, you know, one of the big things for me, people, I could never believe it, how many people would just say, "Oh, give me a hug, give me a hug. Oh, can I just hold you there?" And it's so reassuring, and it's something that we're having to reevaluate now. So we'll see. I hope that we get to a point where we're all comfortable again, and we're all safe. And at least this is a fantastic way to reach out. And there's a bit of intimacy. At least you get to see my posters on my kitchen wall. So yeah. All right. I'm moving on now. I'm getting philosophical. Where are we? Oh, if you were Krista, this is Krista. Hi, Krista Denning. If you were able to be on Doctor Who, what kind of character would you like to be? Like a doctor? Like some people wanted? Well, that was, I must admit, I grew up loving Doctor Who. I saw the very first episode, because as you can tell from my poster here, that I am old. And I remember distinctly seeing the first ever episode and being terrified. I was at my grand's on a Saturday and we watched it. And then the BBC repeated it the following week because it was so powerful and had such a response. Anyway, I've grown up, and I've grown up through the different doctors. Now, in recent years, I haven't kept up so much. I was very much, you know, William Hartnell, John Pertwee, all those early Doctor Who's. And they were great role models for me in a way. I mean, they're sort of part of what I grew up with, so that I don't deliberately copy them, but they're an influence on me. And a lot of people have seen my portrayal of death and said, "You should be the next Doctor." And that's kind of cool. It's very flattering. But I'm kind of happy to see the way that it's going. I'm happy to see that there is a woman. The most interesting thing, though, I've got to say, is the peripheral characters who often reflect society in a way that's more indicative than even the leads. And my daughter's favorite character is the woman, there's a young woman who can't ride a bike, who has dyspraxia, which is something that's shared by my daughter. And so it's really cool to see contemporary issues and awareness brought into a show like that. So I remain a fan, and I would be delighted to be a part of it, but I think I would have to be a baddie. I think I'd have to be on the dark side of Doctor Who. I think I'm too old and too strange to be an endearing doctor anymore. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for the question, and I hope you like it. Now, I've got one last question. I've been told by Brittany, who's doing a great job here. She's sending me all these questions, but she's saying it's the last question. So I better. I'm going to choose it carefully so that I can wrap up. Let's see, where am I? There's so many good ones. It's really hard. Oh boy. Okay. Time for one last question. It's so difficult. Tina, Julian, who is inspiring you the most and why? Oh my goodness, that really, it's a hard one to end with, but I'm not going to limit it to one person. There are many people right now. I mean, we're in a very difficult situation with the pandemic, with coping with the pandemic, with the awful things that have happened in Minneapolis. but with the kind of social wave that is hopeful and positive that's come out of that. So it's really hard to kind of crystallize one person to create either a hero or a bad guy, because we are in the midst of a huge societal change. I think the very fact that we're doing this today is part of that. So I'm just going to say that I look to my community, I look to Supernatural, I look to inspiring figures that meant a lot to me, even going back, you know, to books like Beatrix Potter, people that allow a time for contemplation and reflection and respect and dignity. And I'm not going to like name a person, because I don't want to champion a hero. I want to promote a sense of our necessary communal dependence on each other, and our recognition of inclusivity, and to take the opportunity to thank all of you for joining me today. It's quite humbling to think that there's folks from all over the world here on my time zone talking to me and asking me questions. And thank you. And I hope you get some, I hope we all go through this wave and we come out of it better, and a better society, and stronger. So thank you. Thanks, Creation, for doing this. And it's been great. I've really appreciated this. Even though I haven't had visceral feedback, I've had lots going on the screen here, and it's been really good. And I look forward to doing it again. Bye, everybody. Back to you, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Julian. Tipping is now done. And Sandy88, you are the winner. We're going to contact you via email right now, so make sure you check your inbox. Thanks to everyone who's here with us today. And coming up next weekend, we have a full Stargate weekend, so make sure you're signed up on our email list and follow us at Creation ENT on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for announcements on more virtual content. See you soon.